this is a safe space for people who don't see the sunlight, who are malnourished, and whose primary events of their lives are lived internally. Welcome. You're safe here. Okay, while some girlies are out there getting their vitamin D, we're out here getting our vitamin B for books. You will not be disappointed. I have 4 books that are certain to torment you psychologically. So that's always a good time, especially if there's not much else going on. Okay, I'm just gonna hop right into it. I read these 4 books in May, and I'm gonna start off with the, I guess, horror, the more horrific books. And they're actually very similar. They're very, very similar. If you like one, you might like the other. So we are going with, this is Stephen King's Revival, and The Fisherman by, who is this by? John Langan? Is that correct? John Langan, tell me in the comments, is that correct? Okay, so both of these are popular books. This one, The Fisherman specifically, I have seen at a lot of bookstores. This was in the staff pick section, The Fisherman, and I could not put this thing down. I mean, honestly, I couldn't put either of them down. I read them both in like a few days each. I highly recommend these books. Now, they're very different in the style, but they're actually pretty similar in the contents. They both have elements of cosmic horror, so it's characters like you and me, your everyday people, and the veil is kind of pulled back and they're able to see what's beyond, and what's beyond is actually really horrific and freaky. So the style is really different. Stephen King, of course, notoriously, is like eating bread and butter. It's your basics. It will not fail you. It's entertaining. It's lightning quick, and it's just a good time. I recommend this bad boy if you're in a reading slump, if you go to the beach, if you're on an airplane. This thing will get you through. This thing is like a solid B for me. I forgot what I rated it on Goodreads. It might be 4 stars, or maybe 3, I don't know. This thing, however, it's not quite your bread and butter. This is more like a specialty meal. You know what I mean? Like a pork chop. This is a pork chop, and that's bread and butter. So if you want something more meaty, The Fisherman. I've never read anything structured like this. I think some people are really not gonna like the structure. It's like a story within a story. It's a lot of, the horror comes from a retelling of something that happened. But I was transported into the story. And it really didn't feel like it was being told at me. I was in there experiencing the horror. And it's kind of like a dream. It's super strange tonally, and very dark. Something kind of interesting about these kinds of books is that the horror is these kind of things we don't understand. The supernatural, the otherworldly. That world is accessed through our material world, right? And so there are ways that you can engage with it or not engage with it, or accidentally unleash something truly terrible on the world. But I just really, really recommend The Fisherman. Very unique. Haven't read anything like it, and it's freaky. It's so freaky. Oh yeah, gotta give it up for these too. One thing about Stephen King is like, you know what you're signing up for. If you've read one Stephen King book, it's not that you've read them all, but you understand he has certain commitments to love interests, a certain like Americana small town vibe. This one is about a kind of religion gone freaky. It has to deal with a really weird Reverend Charles Jacobs, who's got like a strange scientific obsession that is upsetting both books deal with the consequences of grief and the consequences of not being able to process grief and come to terms with death. And when you cling on to life, there are these disastrous consequences. When you cling on to the natural world, the realm of the body, you actually open the gateway to the supernatural that will kind of have its revenge on you because you're not supposed to be there. There's like the living life and then the beyond. And when you cling too heavily and you resist going to the beyond, it actually might come to you. Which is really a freaky idea. So, gotta give it up. This is a 5-star book for me. It's just really great. Check this out. You'll notice that I'm a fan of the written word. I don't know, some of y'all are out there having experiences. I'm experiencing the best that culture has to offer. The next book. This is a freaky one. Actually, you know what? This is gonna get its own video. It needs its own video. But it's called The Third Unconscious by Franco Biffo Berardi. It is my only non-fiction book that I have out of the 4, and it was written in the pandemic. This is a complicated book. Look how short it is. It's tiny, but it feels like it takes you a year to read this. It's truly one of those non-fiction books that's just like, okay. It was written in the pandemic, something, like maybe formulating in 2020 and then into 2021. The whole second half is completely irrelevant to me. It's repetitive about what's in the first half, and there are chunks of it. Writers like this who wrote books in the pandemic, like trying to process what was happening while it was happening, I think missed the mark a lot of the time, and it was too soon to write about that. So the second half of the book, I would throw it away. You don't need to read it, and I don't recommend it. But the first half of the book is super interesting. So I can't say that I recommend this book, but I'm just going to talk about what's in the first half, and then you can decide if you want to check it out or not. And I want to make a video dissecting the first half. So The Third Unconscious is about the evolution of our unconscious lives and how COVID marked a turning point such that we moved from a first phase of the unconscious to the second, and then COVID brought about a third, and that now we are in the third phase of unconscious living. Kind of the implications of that, what that means. So it's a super interesting idea. I think it deserves a video of me trying to understand it fully, because he's kind of one of these more postmodern, contemporary philosophers. There's a lot of references to other thinkers and stuff like that, but you can read it by itself. Yeah, it's complicated. I'm like hesitating. There's something about postmodern literature, postmodern philosophy that is incredibly hyperbolic, and I'm gonna read to you a hyperbolic little sentence, and it might make you feel something emotionally, like it did to me. It made me uncomfortable, but because I was uncomfortable, I picked up the book, and I'm glad that I did. This book still makes me uncomfortable. I told you, these are 4 books that torment you psychologically. So I'm gonna read you this kind of sentence that for me is a little difficult. Berardi takes us on a journey through the collective psyche, from the neurosis of modernity, the schizophrenia of late capitalism, to the generalized autism of the age of pandemics. With the links of solidarity severed by a economic system and physical contact made impossible by disease, what remains of our ability to act politically and to imagine a movement dedicated to collective freedom? Yeah, so the ideas about the unconscious in here I think are really relevant and very interesting. The entire thing is packaged in this really emotional, hyperbolic language. Like, he has this chapter about autism and about how people, more and more people, are going to essentially adopt features of clinical, like diagnosable autism as part of their normal life. And there are bits of, like, to me, truth in that, but then it's also a huge problem. My goal in the video I want to make about this book is to not necessarily give my emotional opinions, like my reaction, because I have an emotional reaction to when I hear stuff like that. It rubs me the wrong way. The goal of the video will be to truly, like, calmly, from a place of generosity, try and figure out what he is saying and why he might be using that terminology, and to try and find the meaning in that, while also giving a disclaimer that I have a certain emotional reaction that I'm trying to get past when I read this to understand it. I do think my brain grew in size when I read this. It challenged me, I got through it, and I'm glad that I did, because it was really interesting. But do I recommend it? I don't know. We don't know. Okay, my little ring light that I got from Amazon gave out. I bought that thing for like $8 or something. It holds a charge for maybe like 20 minutes, and then it completely dies. It's a piece of junk. I don't understand why it has like thousands of 5-star reviews. So I have a literal like mini lantern that I just put there, like full, welcome to like the 1800s. I just going full lantern light as I talk about these horrific books. But okay, we're rolling with it, right? Okay. So I have one more book to talk about. I forgot to mention, I think The Third Unconscious, I think I maybe gave it like 3 stars on Goodreads. Again, I probably don't recommend it to you unless you're a really like specific type of person, I don't know. This book, however, despite being completely frustrating, I gave it 5 stars. I also could not put it down, and it provoked like a whirlwind of emotion in me, and reflection on my life, on other people's lives, on what it is like to live in society and like be a person. Okay, that book is Stoner. Also a popular book, this thing I see everywhere, by John Williams. This is Stoner by John Williams. Yeah, it has high reviews on Goodreads. More people are into this book now. I like this cover too. It's pretty interesting. Basically, it's about William Stoner, the character who the book is named after, who spends pretty much his entire life at university, and it's about his life. It's frustrating because it's not like he's really picking what his life is going to be. Life just kind of happens to him, and some pretty uncomfortable things happen to him. And on one hand, he seems to get through those events in a stoic way, but on the other hand, he seems to have a kind of permanent patheticness about him, and his inability to, while he's keeping his internal waters seemingly calm, to me he seems like incapable of having agency, like agency outside of his own self. So I don't quite understand this book, because I think the author meant for him to be in some way aspirational. Like, despite all these things that are happening to him, he clings on to his kind of passion for the university. He kind of keeps going and he perseveres. But also, I look at this as like, this is somebody who is okay with some of the worst things about our society. Like systems that trap people in permanent discomfort for the sake of the family, the society, rule of law, right? Like kind of upholding these cultural institutions like universities, but at the expense of a kind of human richness. And I don't think the world is asking this character to squeeze into that tiny box, but he does it anyway, and we're supposed to like him for it. But I cannot stand him. He's one of the worst characters I've ever encountered in my life. But this book is so good because he wrote that character so well. So well done. And when I read this book, I thought about myself. I honestly thought about like my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation. You know, the type and the stereotype of like, you know, people who got married and then they had to stay married and they hate each other, but you just stick it out. And this whole book is like sticking it out. You just stick it out and you just do it because that's what you're supposed to do. This book was written a long time ago, so it goes through both world wars. And so it has that feeling like life sucks, but you get through it, and marriage sucks, but you stick it out. And I'm tonally confused by what I'm supposed to take away from it, but I took something really big away from it, and the ending made me cry. This book made me cry. Oh my gosh, it's like so many people too live like this guy, and not just, you know, like my grandparents' generation, like any generation. There are people who live like this, and sometimes you have to, and there is a strength in that, but it's also like, to me, like a tragedy of life. My final point is that this book got me even to question my own, like, well, why is that tragic? Like, where is my kind of like individualism maybe clouding my judgment, right? Like, kind of classic, I don't know, like a younger trait to be like, the systems are all broken, you know? But this book made me really wrestle with kind of how my own personal bubble of preferences is clashing with really other people's values and like what other people think is right and good and important for people to do. So, okay. That was it for this book. I recommend Stoner. I didn't like this character at all, but it was a beautiful read, and I did cry. The Third Unconscious, I don't know, skip it, it's really strange, but I'm gonna make a video about it. And then The Fisherman, oh yeah, this is fantastic. And then Revival by Stephen King, also super fun read, love it. So, I'm really glad I read these 4 books. I don't regret any of them. And it certainly kicked off my summer in an interesting way. So, I hope you enjoyed this video and hanging out with me with this lantern. It's kind of got this spooky greenish effect in person. So, maybe I'll use it again. I hope that you're having a wonderful day wherever you are, whatever you're getting up to, or a wonderful night that you're able to relax. You know, maybe we'll go outside and get some actual vitamins from the sun. I don't know. We'll see. I do have another stack of 4 books to read, so sunlight TBD, but I will definitely be back soon for another video, and I hope to see you, and I hope that you're doing good. Okay, I think that's it for this video. I'm gonna go get started on those books, and I will see you in the next